Welcome back to Mackem in the Middle podcast. Second game of the season, and league game of the season. First away game of the season. Of course, last week we covered the opening home game, which was a 2-1 defeat to Ipswich. After that was followed by a defeat on penalties at home to the Cup 8 against League 2 Crewe. And then now it is a 2-1 defeat away to Preston. Which we'll get into what happened, the goals, team selection, lots of other things to talk about. But that is now 3 games into the season, Michael, whether or not you want to count the cup game. We are, because it's still a game. 3 defeats. Probably don't think it's outrageous to say, well, we are definitely expected to beat teams like Crewe. Probably expected to at least go to Preston and get a result. And obviously Ipswich getting up from League One last season, a little bit of an unknown. But home game, first game of the season, you think you would have liked to win it. But you come away from them 3 games with 3 defeats, which just isn't good enough. And we'll get into why we've had these defeats and what could be the cause of it, what can be changed to get off this path very quickly. But just in general, to lose your first 2 games of the season in the league after, your sporting director, I think that's what he is, Speakman comes out and says top 2 is the aim, which is not good enough.
No, it's absolutely not. And the fact of the matter is, when Speakman made that comment, we were going to be judged on that standard. And I think Ipswich, for example, I wouldn't say I was forgiving of it, but like Ipswich, I think will actually be a team that's going to be up there, believe it or not, because they're a threat on the counter-attack. And apparently they played well against Alex Neil-Stoke yesterday. Just had to get a little dig in to cheer myself up. But when you look at yesterday in particular, games, with all due respect to Preston fans, like games like that, you've got to be going there, you've got to be winning, really. You are at least getting a result. And being balanced, I thought the performance did, and you might disagree, but I thought the performance did deserve at least a point. But it doesn't matter. We didn't get it. And you need to be going to get a result against teams like Preston. But what it highlights is, and especially from Speakman's point of view, and this might be whether it's him who's not deciding not to spend money or KLD not releasing the funds to spend the money, we need to get a forward. That's been plainly evident as anything. If we had a forward yesterday and we were in that box, we win that game comfortably, in my opinion, because I didn't think Preston offered all that much. They won't care, nor should they care, but it's not good. You're right, the start is not good enough. And Speakman said that basically implied top 2 is the aim. For me, the aim was at least get into the playoffs. And while it's still early days, and I do think that has to be remembered, it's ultimately still not good enough, and especially not to losing to a team like Preston. But I'm sure we'll come on to that more later.
Yeah, I think the short-term aim for now is to win a game, which would be a nice start.
Nice. Well, hopefully that's the case next week, but we'll wait and see with that.
Or just not lose a game for a start.
Right.
But yeah, so the game against Ipswich, Kyle, obviously him he started, was took off before the first hour. At past Crewe game, we started without a striker. Preston, we start without a striker. Bradley Dack plays up top. It's now 3 windows where everybody involved in the club has known what we've needed. The first window probably needed another striker. Gets to January. Obviously Stewart's injured. Sims gets recalled. Needed another striker. We didn't get one. Everyone's hanging their hats on. We can't make the same mistake again. We've got 2-3 months to plan for the new season, and yet we've started the season with the same problems, because you're still, like I say, starting 2 of the 3 opening games without a striker. Obviously, Ahmad left to go back to Man United after his loan last season. Everyone knew pretty much 6 months into that loan spell that we needed to find a replacement for him, and obviously Hadji was meant to be that man, and he's been sold to Qatar for what is believed to be a reasonable fee. And we haven't seen any of that back yet. To be, like I say, 3 games in the season, out of a cup competition, bottom half of the table without a point, and a lot of it comes down to just not being prepared and not getting what we needed for a long time that we've known before.
Yeah, and I think what's difficult too is as much as we were aware of our need for a striker, so was every other team. So anyone that we approached kind of knew our desperation at that point. And you see some of these prices that are thrown out there, and it's really easy to kind of lose context of that as well and be like, oh, well, it's only 8 million here, only 8 million there. And I completely understand that. And I think it would be worth it at this point to spend kind of whatever is necessary. But it's it's a really tough situation to be in, and I guess it just depends on the type of players that we're looking for. Seems like a lot of the teams that were like that Ukrainian lad that we're supposedly trying to get after, and they're just not negotiating on price, which, why should they, I guess, right? So it's a lot of our own doing. I think it also even goes back to just how our academy was absolutely rated during the Stuart Donald era as well. Lost a lot of good attacking players for absolutely nothing. That in their natural development, this is when they would have been probably starting. You see the likes of Ballymoomba or Joe Hugel, those types of players would have absolutely helped us. Not saying that it's all trying to take the blame off of the front office and things like that, but they're aware of it, I'm sure. And it's just, I would just like something, at least some sort of positive news. All we're hearing is, the same typical kind of BS rumors at this point. And then, now we're hearing about losing more players, which I think is actually was just going to happen from the start. To bring players in, we're going to have to sell off some of our assets. I'm sure we'll get onto that in a little bit. Some of the players that we've grown to like, and especially myself, they have grown to love over the past few seasons. And that's just going to be, and I hate using this, but it's just going to be part of the process. We are just really at the ugly part of that process right now. We just gotta hope we bring someone in, because yesterday starting Bradley Dack was, as much as I think he's a good player, it's just the fact that we didn't have a striker out there. I'm just like, oh God, not again.
Yeah. And if you look at the 3 games that we've lost, Michael obviously did the Crew game 1-1 after 90 minutes, still ended up losing the game on penalty, so slightly different with that one, but dominated all 3 games really. Possession, possession at the back, possession in midfield, getting the ball up to the attackers, and in all 3 games, that's where it just fell apart. The Ipswich game, the delivery into the box when Hamir was on the pitch was just terrible. Corners were terrible, free kicks were terrible, crosses were terrible. Obviously the Crew game, don't have an outlet up front, and struggle to make anything of it. And then again against Preston, the transition play wasn't bad. The likes of Bellingham and Dack, getting the ball out wide to Roberts to Clark, and the delivery I think was better against Preston than it was against Ipswich. But you just have no one there. There's no one in the box to receive that cut back and put the ball in the back of the net. I think there was one time someone got on the end of it, and I think it was when Clark cut it back to Roberts and probably should have scored, hit it straight at Woodman. But all this possession, all these duels that you can win, everything means nothing if you're not going to do anything when you get to the final third.
No, and that's always been the case. It's one thing having possession for possession's sake, but you need to actually be proactive with the possession. You need to be forward thinking with it. You need to turn that possession into goals and dominance into goals. Because in terms of all 3 games, well, I can't comment on the Crew game, but certainly the 2 league games, we did more than enough to earn something out of both games. But again, the problem is, as soon as we got into the final third, especially against Ipswich, we looked pretty toothless. At least here today, we actually got into better scoring positions, and we just were a bit prolific in front of goal. But the frustration, I suppose, comes from that we weren't whipping crosses in against Ipswich in particular when we had Hamir in the box. And yet yesterday, when we didn't have an outlet in the box, we had Bradley Dack, who I actually thought played quite well, actually, but we had him in the box rather than Hamir, and then we seemed to want to cross the ball, which is, it's a bit questionable, really, isn't it? So I don't know whether it's just because, you might agree with this. I think it's probably to do with the fact we're still adjusting to life without Amad Diallo there. God knows what's going to happen with that one, but obviously with his injury, he's definitely not coming back, and certainly not in this window. I don't know what it is. I think it's just the frustration that we seem to be trying different different ways of playing and different methods in the final third when we don't have the personnel to suit those particular methods. So it's a frustrating one. Like I said, I'm just trying to think because I wonder whether yesterday in hindsight would have suited Hamir's game a bit better, but I suppose the fact he didn't start is probably on Tony Mowbray. But yeah, there's just a lot of frustration going around with that.
Yeah. And I suppose whilst you can look at Sunderland's deficiencies in front of goal, Kyle, and some of the mistakes we've made, the goals, especially the second goal against Ipswich, where Luke O'Nien is I kind of call ball watching, ball goes through, he's nowhere near the attacker. But there is a slice of luck certainly going against us as well at the start of the season. When you look at the 4 goals we've conceded in the league, 3 of them are deflections. The first one, Broadhead, in the Ipswich game. Don't know who it was, had a shot, but he has a shot. Patterson's, ready to collect it. He'll probably do do anything
It
you
was a
wanted.
good run by
before he collected
Broadhead,
it.
to be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it was exactly the type of goal that he scored for us, where he's just anticipating, and I'll get to that later. But sorry, yeah, go
I
ahead.
think that could even be generous, because I realistically think when the player's had a shot, it's hit Broadhead. I don't think Broadhead knows anything about it really. Deflects and goes in.
Yeah, the run was sorry to interrupt. The run was good, but yeah, it did go off him, really, didn't it?
Yeah.
For me, anyway.
Right.
And then against the run of play, Preston take the lead in the game on, I was going to say yesterday, but this is probably going to go out on Monday, so on
At
Saturday.
the weekend.
Yeah. Again, player has a shot, terrible shot, straight to Patterson. If their striker isn't in the way, hits Will Keane, rebound, deflects into the back of the net again, literally identical to that first Ipswich goal.
Only slower, yeah.
And like I say, whilst you can look at what Sunderland do well and what they aren't doing well, and what they need to get, what they need to sign, what they need to change, it is just still a lot of luck going against us in these games at the minute.
Yeah, and I think I posted that in the group chat, and you actually said it wasn't luck, but actually, you were saying
nice one. Just call him out.
No, that's right. He was saying that because I said that we were unlucky versus other teams.
I'll get the receipts. I'll get the receipts.
It was something along those lines, but yeah, there's absolutely an element to luck, but at the end of the day, it is just kind of bizarre because I feel like we're getting the same types of chances kind of in and around the box, but every time we hit it towards goal, there's 6 players in the way versus us. I don't know if it's how we're spaced out on defense or what, but yeah, these types of deflections seem to kind of just be going in, and it's tough to really blame, especially I can't really blame Patterson, but I think it is good that we brought Bishop in. I'm just saying that off the start, not saying that that's what's necessary because I don't think it would have been any different, but it's at least good to have somewhat of a backup plan. But regardless, yeah, there's an element to luck. You got to make your own luck. I think I'm just at the point now, if you look at even last season, look at the types of teams who did not start the season well and look at where they ended up. I'm thinking the likes of even Burnley and Coventry as well. I think Coventry is probably the best example. Granted, they had a lot of weird circumstances with their home ground and things like that, but I think we're treading that line really finely, that we just have to still kind of remain behind the team, which I think we will, and I think especially the fans that actually do show up to the games versus the one that just about shit on Twitter are always going to be behind the team. But we are just riding a little bit of unluckiness, whereas last season we definitely had, I wouldn't say luck, we earned a lot of it, but some fortunate bounces went our way just in the overall league table and things like that. So maybe we're just paying for it now, but it would just be nice to see a squad out there that we know, okay, every position is filled to kind of that desired need, like a natural striker, natural this, and then see how we play. Because I just feel like as a fan base, we haven't been able to see that since Ross Stewart got injured, and so we've just been having to watch at times an absolutely beautiful form of football, but it's when it doesn't work, it's just the most frustrating thing in the world, because it's like, oh, if only we had a striker, but then it's, let's see how we actually play with that striker. But the window's still open. I think Tony Mowbray said it. I could be totally wrong, but he said something along the lines of he kind of feels like the season doesn't truly start until that window closes, because you don't know what you're going to have, don't know what you're going to be left with. And I tend to agree with that a little bit. So as frustrating as it is now, because we've been waiting all summer for the season to start, and then it starts with quite the whimper, we're still seeing some patterns of good play, which I'm sure we'll get into more, but it's there. We just gotta, quote unquote, trust the process, as we like to say out here. So
yeah. One of the times that Sunderland did get in the Preston box and keep the ball, resulted in the goal of Saturday. I keep wanting to say yesterday, of Saturday's game. Jack Clark gets the ball, goes down in the box. Is it a bit soft? Possibly. Gets the penalty. And obviously makes it 1-1 at the time. But, it's little things like that where if you get the ball into the box, Michael, the things can happen. Not everything has to be, the level of the goal that we scored, for example, against Reading. Not everything has to be perfect. If you get the ball into the box, it might hit a hand, you get a penalty. Player might get fouled, you get a penalty. Yeah. If you have a shot from inside the box, it might deflect off your striker who has no idea about it, and wrong foot the keeper and go in, like it has twice against us so far this season. But, whilst we did it then, we scored the penalty. We just aren't doing any of that enough. We're not getting the ball in the box. We're not getting players in the box. We're not having shots. And if you don't shoot, if you don't get in the box, you can't have any luck fall your way, really, because how many times, not just against Preston, but again against Ipswich, and I feel like it was quite a similar story at the start of last season as well, where, we can have the ball 20 yards out. You could have a shot, but we don't. So we play it out wide to Clark. Clark plays it back into the middle, goes out wide right to Roberts. Roberts puts it back in the middle. We lose possession, they break on us and, create a chance from it because they move the ball quickly, efficiently. They don't overplay it. And I think that is what Sunderland are doing at the minute as well, is just overplaying. Just get a ball into the box, who knows what can happen.
Well, exactly. If you get the ball in the box, then ultimately it makes defenders panic, doesn't it? It makes them think, oh no, hang on, what's going to happen from here? And ultimately, the time that we did do that with resulted in the penalty. I wasn't sure of the penalty at first, but when I look at the replay back, I think it's a definite stonewaller because Clark's getting away from his man, and the lad absolutely literally tugs at his shirt, almost rips it with the ferocity that he's tugging. That sounds wrong, but he's got hold of his shirt quite vigorously, and he goes down. And yes, you could say maybe he went down easily, but no, for me it was a stonewall penalty. But it goes back to the point you said that we seem to be toothless in the final third, and it feels to me like because the goal against Reading last year, just as one example, was so good, should have still been goal of the season, by the way, but because we did that, it feels like we're trying to score the perfect goal too much. And sometimes, and even I'm someone who's isn't as keen on players just having a shot for the hell of it from outside the box, because more times than not, it doesn't go in. But sometimes you just got to test them. I mean, there was a couple of occasions where I think Ekwa had a shot that went just wide. And
I mean, like a lot of our best chances so far this season, again, we're talking 2 games in. Ipswich, Ekwa had a shot from 25 yards, keeper saves it
to Job Bellingham.
To Job, and I think 9 times out of 10 he probably scores that. Obviously, he doesn't score at that time, but it's a big chance and probably should have scored. Another few chances came again. Ekwa had a shot from the edge of the box yesterday that forced Woodman into a good save. And again, I'm going to allude to it again. The 2 goals we've conceded so far this season are from shots outside the box that have hit someone and went in. But they don't hit anyone and go in if you don't have the shot in the first place. And at the minute, we're not doing that.
And then, but then that becomes the question of, is that Mowbray coaching that into them, or is he trying to coach them out of that? But the players have got that ingrained so much that they can't adjust to it. So I don't know. It depends on who you put the blame there with that. But yeah, it is starting to frustrate me as well. Like sometimes when, like you said last week, Ekwa had the shot against Ipswich, and it led to, granted Bellingham missed the chance, but it still led to the chance, though, didn't it? So that becomes then, well, why don't we do that more often? Why do we not have a goal? And these players we've got, I think for the most part, are technically quite solid players. So sometimes if you have a good technique, you might have a shot, you might have a pop and see if it goes in or not. So yeah, so I think it just comes down to decision making in the final third. But yeah, it's just really, really irritating. And again, coupled with the fact, and I've tried very hard not to mention clean sheets, but I can't avoid it. Like, although 3 of the goals we conceded are deflections, there's things we could do in the build-up to make sure those deflections don't happen. And it comes from silly daftness. So coupled with our unwillingness to have a shot inside the final third, and then coupled with the luck with what's happening against us, I suppose it's not as much of a wonder we're losing games at the moment.
Yeah. And you speak about mistakes getting made in the build-up to goals. That's how Preston get their second, Kyle, because we have the ball. I think Ekwa plays into Bellingham, or Job, as he likes to be known by. And you can see what he's looking for. He's looking for the 1-2 from Ekwa. And, if it comes off, it's a nice piece of play. You don't actually get anywhere with it, really. But obviously, Ekwa doesn't read it. Job plays the ball into just open space. Preston break quickly. None of this sideways passing, none of this foot on the ball, stop, see where players are. They just break forward. Again, another lucky deflection, but 2-1 Preston, and obviously that's the goal that won them the game.
Yeah, I have the goal pulled up right here, and they talk about deflection. I mean, Ballard gets to it, and then it just bounces off. I think it's Keane's back foot, but somehow also just plays a perfect through ball. It's unbelievable. But yeah, the giveaway at the other end is tough, and I really like Job. I think I understand kind of why he's there. It just feels like at times that they're kind of used to just being on the training pitch a little bit, and that they're not used to kind of the physicality or the pressure that these teams are kind of putting on. And that's the one kind of critique I have of Job, who is it just sounds terrible. I'm a 31-year-old guy just sitting in an office, and he's 17-year-old professional footballer. So what do I know? But yeah, it does just feel like we're having a hard time kind of adjusting to just the physicality. And I think it's mostly from the new lads who maybe weren't with us last season and things like that. I do think teams play us very differently than how they would kind of just go at a typical outing. And so another frustrating one, give it away, and then they just kind of break on the counter because of the way we play, where we bring our fullbacks up and things like that. It can make it difficult to recover, and you see it there. I think it's Dan Neal trying to recover to cover the guy who ends up scoring, but it's not his man to begin with. And defensively, we're just kind of all over the shop. And I think the easy thing to point to is we're missing our player of the year from last season and Danny Bath. So hopefully we can figure something like that out. The whole Luke 09 thing at center back, I love Luke to death. I absolutely do. But it does feel like there's just the partnership between him and Dan Ballard is just not there. It's just not as good as it was, or as good as it could be. Maybe it will come, but defensively is really where the biggest concern is. Not even the season. I mean, it was preseason. Preseason, we were shipping goals. Granted, a couple of them kind of were lucky there too. But I'm not really sure. I don't know if it's just the way we're playing now, and I know we're supposed to be playing a little bit of a higher line, is what Mowbray's been saying, even with Patterson even coming out and kind of joining that higher line at times when we're in possession. But maybe one of you guys can identify it more. But does it look like we've changed defensively that much, or is it just we're kind of just getting caught out and when we're losing the ball?
I think what Mowbray's trying to do more is, and whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, is start and attacks more often from the back. Which, when it comes off, again, our Redden goal looks class. Some of the best goals you'll score. But when it goes wrong, 9 times out of 10, you're going to concede either goals or chances from it. And I think that's why O'Nien plays over Bart, and you can have the debate, should O'Nien be in there? Is he the best player we've ever had? Is he the worst player we've ever had? Does he get criticised for things that other players are doing worse than him? Which is, yes, is the answer to that. But O'Nien will get the ball and he play it out. A few times he, even started an attack. There was once he ended up on the left wing, and I think he either won a free kick or got a ball in the box or something. And that's what they're trying to do. But when it doesn't go well, that's when you get caught out. And that's when we have been caught out in the games so far.
Yeah, and it's frustrating. There's got to be a balance there, I'm sure. And luckily for us, there's a lot of season left to be able to figure these out. And I think we'll figure it out. There's the balance we got to strike with the players that we have. And like we said, I think we're going to expect a couple players out. I think we're going to be losing 2 players, maybe one more on the defensive side if you're looking kind of at the Lyndon Gooch rumors and things like that. But then it's okay, how do we fill that in? Do we want to bring in an attacking defender, so to speak, or do we want to just bring in another brick shit house like we had in Danny Bath and go that route? That's, and then we got the young lads that we brought in Trantis and is Sealt? Is that the other one? Or
Jansen Sealt,
yeah. So it's a little unfortunate that we got out of the cup games a little early, right? Because those are fantastic opportunities to play those kind of fringe players, the young players that we brought in. But now we're gonna have to wait for the next ones to kind of go through there, or have them train with the younger squads and things like that. But at the moment it's really defensively. But what would help an offense right now, or a defense, is scoring a couple more goals, not allowing teams just to sit back and wait for the counter. Like, it's kind of what it's very League One reminiscent at times, where we're just shipping goals at. It's.
I mean, people say offense is the best form of defense,
right.
And whilst I think Michael very much has a stance on clean sheets, and if you keep clean sheets, you're more likely to win.
No, don't get me wrong. If you
don't score goals,
it puts more pressure on them and gives them less opportunity to hurt you, doesn't it? Yeah, I get it.
So if you keep clean sheets, you're more likely to win. But if you don't score goals, you can't win. Is the way that I think Sunderland are kind of playing at the minute, and we do struggle to look like we're going to score goals at the minute. But there's still time to go. Like I said, there's still 44 games. You could still finish on 100 and mathing at the minute.
132 points or something, I think.
Something like, is it? Yeah, something like that. So you could still technically finish on that. Will we? No.
Are you saying HMS Walk the League is still on?
It could be. Which, going off some people's reactions, you would think there's no chance of that anymore. But
no, apparently
still 44 games left
already. So,
we are. Sounds like David Moyes. But still plenty of games left. There's still the transfer window left for players to come in, which, like I said, we have said that twice before and it never happened. But hopefully, with the rumours coming in of Rusin, how did I say his name? But the Ukrainian forward, whether he's going to be the answer or not, He's been linked, and that could be getting closer, but who knows? There's still another few weeks, I think, of the transfer window for players to come in there. But the next game is Rotherham at home, and pretty much very similar to the 3 games we've had so far this season, Kyle, where Sunderland are expected to win. And after 3 defeats on the bounce, 4 if you include a 5-2 pre-season defeat to Hartlepool, you need to win. Not just for the points, not just for morale, but just for everything going on at the club at the minute. A win just to calm things down a little bit.
Yeah, and I feel like Rotherham, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like we just haven't beaten them in quite a long time, unless I'm just forgetting something.
I think we beat
them at home last season.
Did we? Yeah. Okay, we beat them at home. Okay, thankfully that's good. But yeah, a loss would kind of, I think, fully put us into somewhat of a meltdown mode amongst the fan base. Not that the fans really dictate, how we play necessarily, but it's a lot. I would say we have a very passionate and loud fan base, and the majority of them just happen to be on Twitter. Is that people, I think, forget that Twitter is not reality, and I think it's important that we don't just melt down for the sake of like getting reactions online. It's there's nuance to this, and I've retweeted my chart of just the typical Sunderland season where it's just like we hit kind of step 2 or 3 where it's we lose a couple games and then everybody just starts attacking everybody, and and then it's Speakman, it's KLD's finances in the way, it's whatever. A win would just feel really damn good, and I know that sounds so simple, but it's 7:30 in the morning here, and that's all I can look forward to is honestly just get a win. I just want to start enjoying this season again, because it's 2 games in, I'm already absolutely exhausted. So I think we'll do it. I think we'll do a 2-0 win. I think Job is going to score his first goal, and then Patrick Roberts, who is absolutely phenomenal against Preston, by the way. I mean, just some of the things he does, it still amazes me. But I think it'll be Job and Patrick Roberts scoring 2-0.
Yeah. The main thing I took from what you just said there is that you're 7 hours behind us. I thought you were 5.
No, yeah, it's 7.
Interesting. Well, 2 o'clock seems a lot earlier than I initially planned to.
No, it's fine. I'm fine with that. It's anything earlier than that, I'm like, no chance.
But yeah, Rotherham at home, Michael, need to win. Are we going to? You made up a new word there.
Right. Okay. Well, there's a bit of a rant I want to sort of quickly get out of my system here while I've got the chance. But first of all, on the game, purely not for reverse psychology, I'm going to go 1-1 because I said we'd win the first 2 and we haven't. So let's see if reverse psychology works. The second thing I want to point out is just very quickly on what Kyle mentioned about that I've noticed a lot of people are starting to @Speakman a lot on Twitter and are starting to really have a go at him. And while I agree that the criticism of not getting another forward is an absolutely valid one, especially with the last few windows, I'm starting to get a bit sick of him getting all the stick and none of it going towards Kyle Louis-Dreyfus whatsoever. Because we've got to remember, he's the one who's the majority shareholder in the club. And I think it's about time questions start going his way, especially if we don't do well the window. But yeah, it's just one where if we don't get the forward in, then that's something that Speakman included deserves criticism over. But I just think it's about time that we start judging KLD and start looking at him instead of pointing fingers at Speakman all the time. But as for the game itself, yeah, I'll say 1-1 reverse psychology, but I'm not going to lie. If we can't beat Rotherham, then it's not going to be great, is it?
No, like I said, that would be 4 games in the season without a win. And obviously, if you lose that game, that's 4 defeats to start the season amidst everything else going on at the club, both on and off the pitch. It would not be a good start, and things would probably turn sour pretty quickly if they haven't already. But that's on Saturday. We'll try and get a preview out for that game. We did struggle to get one for Preston because there's not too many pages around. Try and get a preview out for that game against Rotherham. If not, we'll be back to talk about the game afterwards, hopefully talking about how big of an impact our new centre forwards had with a 5-0 win or whatever it could be. That would be nice, but we'll see. But that game is on Saturday. We'll get a podcast out on the Sunday or the Monday discussing it. But until then, we will see you there.
That's all, folks.